Hey guys, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having.
Yeah, of course. Today I've got Michelle Foard here with me today.
Hey guys, thank you for having us.
And Matthew Zeiss.
What's up, guys? I hate it here. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking.
Matthew is across the pond. Where are you, sir?
Right now I'm in Sweden, as you can hear by my super Swedish accent. My wife is from Sweden, and I moved here to be with her, and so right now I am. Yeah, I think that's why to me you two are lagging visually. I'm just staring at frozen smiles, which is delightful, by the way.
Before we get into the topic, Michelle, I know you have a charity that you recently started, so I was wondering if you could give us some information about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Basically, the name of the charity is called Capes for a Cause. That's C-O-S, cause like cosplay. Kind of what brought it about was, obviously during the pandemic, we were all sort of stuck at home, as you were. And one of the side effects of the pandemic, something that I think cosplayers didn't really discuss very much, was the lack of opportunities to now enter hospitals and children's hospitals, because before the pandemic that was the way that a lot of cosplayers were able to reach out to the community, and so now that opportunity to give back is gone. And so I was having discussions with different cosplayers, trying to figure out, well, what can we do to make up for that? How can we make a difference? And in the beginning, I kept reaching out to friends, asking for charity events and for like volunteer events, and nobody had anything. And so, in January of 2022, I just had the idea, why not just start my own? And so what we do is we build adaptive custom cosplay costumes for children with disabilities. So whether a child has a wheelchair or any type of mobility aid, so like a walker or anything like that, or if there maybe have developmental disabilities like autism or Down syndrome, we do whatever we can to work with the family and find out what are the child's individual specific needs, and how can we make a costume for them that they love based on a character or a film that they're interested in, and B, how can we adapt it and tailor make that to fit their needs. And so the very first costume that we're making right now is for a little boy. He's 5 years old, and his name's Anthony. And he's in a wheelchair. He has cerebral palsy, so he's nonverbal. But he reacts and responds, and he's in love with firefighters. So we're building him like a fire truck that goes around his wheelchair and a firefighter costume. It's in its infancy, but I'm excited to see where it goes.
That's super cool.
Thank you.
That's some real humanitarian work.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great idea. How can people get involved, or how can they find out more?
Yeah, all you have to do is follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram. It's Capes for a Cause, so CAPES for a COS cause. You can also find a link to it on my personal profile as well, which is just Michelle Foard.
That little boy is in good hands, because if you start following Michelle's page, like the cosplay she has done over the years has been phenomenal. So it's I don't know. This seems to be a calling for you. Like, this is pretty.
I feel that way. It's cool because it feels mutually beneficial. Not only do I get to like craft and create, and I love like building things, not just sewing the costumes, but like actually building like a structure around the wheelchair. But the crafting aspect is so up my alley, but it feels fulfilling emotionally, and it fills me up, and it does feel like my calling. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you
for sharing with us. And Matthew has a project of his own that he's actually sporting some gear for. You want to tell us about it a little bit?
Not after that. No, that's hard to. I should have gone first. That's bullshit. No, honestly, I mean that was great. No, for me, it's nothing nearly as humanitarian style, but it is for the people. I'll give it that. It's a fan series. I wanted to supply. We've had multiple incarnations of Batman over the years, even in recent years. But for me, I wasn't satisfied with the content that was being put out. I wanted a solo movie with Ben Affleck. For me, I thought he was a phenomenal Batman. I'm sure we'll wind up talking about that more later, but I wanted something authentic, something organic. I'm just going to make it. I'm going to make my own series, and I gathered up some friends and colleagues and really built together what was an awesome pilot, and then a lot of things happened that put that on pause. I had a stroke. My special effects artist passed away. Then, of course, COVID came about. It was a bunch of stuff. And then finally, I was like, you know what? Let me put together episode 2. And, we're still in the process of putting that together. I figured, what's the rush? Matt Reeves kind of laid some ground for a bit, so people are going to be satisfied for a while. Fans, you see some fans complaining like, oh, there's so many Batmans. Who gives a hell? I'll take every Batman. I don't care. Right. They're great. Any incarnation of Batman's cool by me. So, yeah, it was just me putting my touch on the legacy.
Yeah, and that's it's a fan series. It's not completely unheard of for people to be making these sorts of passion projects. Like, they've been doing it forever. There isn't anything wrong with you bringing your perspective and your love of the character to give it another intricate kind of story. Like, Batman is very, very malleable, as we've seen in film and in comics and in television. So I think it has real potential, and I'm looking forward to seeing more. I know you've had some hurdles, but you're still going through it, man. Like,
I have to see it through. Yeah. I can't because in episode 1 the costume wasn't revealed, so it would just be garbage if I just was like, okay, I'm done, whatever. But there's stuff to see. I was working with Unmasked Studios to make the bodysuit, which came out awesome. Hernandez Effects and I have been working on the cowl, and everything was just, it's coming out great. It's also hard to budget such a thing by yourself. You know what I mean? And my wife really doesn't care for it, so it's not money that should be being spent.
I think it's in the vows, in sickness and in health and in personal passion projects, till death do us part. I've never spoken the vows. I might be filling in some gaps there, but I'm pretty sure it's part of it.
And while you are right, if it starts affecting the bills,
for sure.
But because it's a lot of money to put in. I think we filmed the scene I showed you, the one penthouse scene, and that by itself I think cost me, and it's not a lot when you're talking movie making, but it's a lot when it's coming out of an individual's pocket. I think it was like $4,000 that scene alone cost me. So
it's not easy to produce your own work. I've done it myself, and I didn't do it on the scale that you're trying to do. So kudos to you for giving it all you can. So look, it's
an illness.
It's a it's a passion project, and sometimes those can be the death of you. So you'll have to come to terms with it in some way, shape, or form. So, but I wish you the best of luck, sir. I think it's time to talk about the Batman. It seems to be doing very well. Fan reception is high. So is the critical reception. I always like talking about this stuff with friends and people who are fans. So that's kind of why I wanted to get both of you guys on the show. I guess what I want to get first is initial thoughts. Now I'm gonna preface this by because Matthew, you had brought it up. Ben Affleck being Batman, because this thing has been in production since 2013. That's kind of like when Batfleck first got the role, and there was already talk about having him having a solo Batman movie. So we'll talk about that briefly. But how did you guys feel about Ben Affleck possibly getting a solo Batman movie? Michelle, can I start with you? Did you want to see a solo Batman movie?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of with Matt. Like, I feel like there can't be enough content, like bring it on. I love all the different portrayals and all of the different takes, Yeah, absolutely. I'm always open-minded about that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Matthew, obviously, you said you were in favor of it. So, how do you feel about Batfleck?
When he was first cast, I, like everybody else, was like, oh, I don't think so, blah, blah, blah. And then I think he was the most comic accurate Batman I'd ever seen. He was what I always wanted to see in a Batman. He was the first Batman ever given the costume of just the gray and the black. He was a brolic bull of a dude, and they portrayed him that way, where he was just a tank. He was, few words. I loved everything Snyder brought to that character. I don't like Batman in a universe with Superman and Green Lantern and all this stuff. I like solo Batman films. So I think Ben Affleck's Batman would have been even better in a solo film. I would have loved to see him do the things we got to see Robert Pattinson do in regards to, generally speaking, detective type of work.
I think a lot of people after the Nolan movies got really stuck in their heads about Batman not killing people, which is fine. In this version of Batman's life that we see him in now, he's popping pills, he's boozing heavily, like he's clearly just at the end of his rope, and I think it lends itself to that violent streak of possibly killing some people. So I think he got a lot of unnecessary flack for his interpretation of that.
Yeah, and I think what you said was a great thing about people got so stuck in the Nolan trilogy. People that weren't even Batman fans before saw those movies and thought this was the definitive Batman.
Right.
It was a unique Batman because it wasn't comic accurate. It was a real world interpretation of this character.
Look, there's different interpretations of everything, and that's the other thing that people don't seem people get really bent out of shape. Like, it's an interpretation. Yeah. So as long as it makes sense within the world that's being presented, then I can go along.
Yes.
With it. So that's really all I wanted to get across there. Okay, so moving on to The Batman. How did you feel leading up to this movie?
The moment Reeves and Pattinson were announced, I was like, this is going to be great. I was like, this is going to be an absolutely phenomenal movie. I knew it immediately. Pattinson was catching so much shit, which is so silly. And people are just so, and that's some of the things that affected Affleck, where you hear the bullshit from fans and the crap people have to say. And Pattinson, I'm sure was trying to, but he dove into it. From my understanding, he read the comics like intently, and the only thing I had read that a lot of people were pissed about, and it was that it was rumored that he was against working out, which it seems like that's not true, because he looked like he was working out quite a bit.
Sure.
And then when you first heard the rumors that it was going to be like the movie Seven, which it very much was, it was like, what could go wrong? This movie's going to be fantastic, and it really was.
Michelle, how about you?
It was interesting that you mentioned kind of having that like Nolan version in your head, because I went in feeling that way, and honestly, the first on-screen 20 minutes, I was not feeling Pattinson. It took me a while to sort of suspend my own bias, and just open up my mind and be like, nope, this is a different universe. I had to literally check myself at the very beginning.
Nerds, man, we're all just we're so critical sometimes. It's the worst. I know I was very much anticipating this movie. Pattinson being cast made all the sense to me, and people forget that he's actually a really good actor. People like to just cling on to the fact that he was in the Twilight movies, which sure, I'm not gonna pretend that I saw them. The snippets that I've seen are terrible, but that man got in, he made his money, and then he just did a bunch of weird indie projects. So that man is a real actor, and it was the role of Batman is in good hands. I know that during the movie, I was locked in. I've been trying lately to just kind of avoid any talk about the movie before I see it. Any additional trailers, fine, but I won't seek out all these scenes that the studios will release. So I like going to the movie. I want the movie to wash over me and tell me and just let it happen to me. So I know that I watched it and I wasn't bored. I very much appreciated the new take on it. the slower, but more not slower, but more methodical pacing of the movie.
It didn't feel like 3+ hours to me at all.
No.
And some films do, you know.
What I appreciate, because we were talking about the Nolanverse, is how Gotham City kind of became a character again. You know, like, again, this is not to take away from the Nolan movies, but after the first one, after Batman Begins, Gotham just became a mishmash of New York and Chicago. It was no longer its own unique thing, and in this one, it was definitely more gothic and a little neo-noir. It's the dirtiest, wettest version of Gotham that we've seen so far, and that's when like comic book movies tend to shine, when the atmosphere, like you understand the world, like it's different. You know, Burton did it.
I love it when it makes you feel uncomfortable. I felt that way about Joker too. Like there's a darkness and a grittiness that when you're watching makes you actually feel uncomfortable. And I felt that way about Gotham in this film. It felt so dirty and grungy, and I just, the whole time, you're right, I kept thinking this is what Gotham is supposed to be.
How do we feel about the Batman, the character of the Batman in this movie? Michelle, I'd like to start with you.
Well, you know, it's really interesting because I feel like I actually gained a lot more insight about the film after I reflected on it. Mm-hmm. You know, I sat in it in the moment, took it all in, but then I was able to sort of sit down and reflect and read and, yeah, just think about it. The more I enjoyed the portrayal. Again, I had to sort of like sit back and go, okay, this is year 2. This is a completely different story, and that's great, you know? Yeah. What a cool take. You know, here we have this version of Batman that's reclusive. He's not the philanthropist. He's not the, you know, sort of the like the Playboy image or whatever that he's been portrayed in the past. And it was really a wonderful sort of character study in grief and seeing that sort of side of him and what he goes through, you know, with the development of the storyline of his parents. And it was so interesting watching him develop from this character that is sort of really focused on fear and the concept of like vengeance. Sure. And wanting to control crime in that way. And it's sort of not working, you know, in those first 2 years. And so watching him make that adjustment in mid-film into more of the softer side, more the development of the character of Batman that we're used to seeing in popular culture.
Or someone who inspires hope.
Yeah, exactly. And that felt to me like it was necessary, like it was something we hadn't seen before, and I loved that. Once I kind of got in that mindset, you know, I just loved it. I loved the moments when, and there weren't many in this film when he was Bruce, but I mean I loved the sort of dark emo, you know, aspect that Pattinson brought to it. I loved the focus on sort of like the like dark grungy makeup, which a lot of the other films don't focus so much on his makeup when he's Bruce, you know.
They don't focus on it at all.
At all, yeah, right. They edit it out. You know, he takes off the cowl and there's no makeup, and I loved that. I loved the hair and sort of the dark eyes, and it felt like an actual character study and not just a caricature of Batman, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like it's a combination of things, because right off the bat, it discusses, or there's the narration, and it shows you how he instills fear. You know, criminals think that he's living in the shadows. Sure. They think he's everywhere. So it shows you that aspect of him, and then it shows, in addition, what he is, but the sign of hope. It's great to see those different aspects, because those things are what he is. He should be a sign of hope to those who are receptive for it, but he should also be something to be feared from criminals and scum of Gotham. The action that was in the movie was great. It was fast. It was believable. You know, the first moment where I loved when he was facing the gang on the train station, and you know, they did show it in the trailer, but it was extra in the movie where he grabs the guy and he's electrocuting him. It was so, the technology, you know, they mixed the fact that it was 1980s gritty with modern technology, you know, the contact lens showing you the extra detective side of things, how he's capturing these things. I truly loved the detective aspect of it. I thought that was fantastic. I would love to know, I would have loved to hear little bits of how he became that, you know what I mean? Because, yes, this is year 2. Depending on which comic book you'd reference, there are different educational processes that he goes through. I think it was year 1. No. Earth 1, where he makes a deal with Commissioner Gordon pretty much. And pretty much he's like, teach me how to be a detective kind of thing. But you do see the learning process that he's going through. It was, honestly, what if, and Michelle mentioned Joker. I think that movie, the 2 Gothams, we're talking about 2 of the 2 pieces of art. They are truly 2 cinematic pieces of art. Even if you take the comic book aspect completely out of them, they're phenomenal films individually in their own right.
It feels like those 2 movies can live in the same world.
I agree. I thought that the whole time. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to suggest that they should do that because I don't want to combine. Everyone needs to stop trying to make cinematic universes. Just stop. Marvel did it. They're the only ones who know how to do it, so just let them do it.
Although it would be fun.
I don't know, man. I'm with you. I would prefer it to not intertwine. Yeah.
I think it just gets too complicated. It loses the point of what makes it unique. So anyway, I know that what I loved about the Batman character is a lot of just the little things. There's a lot of little things that they got right in this movie. Michelle mentioned the makeup, which is something you never see. The voiceover, which I interpreted as his inner monologue, and that's something I appreciate. Obviously, he was writing it in the journal, but it's okay. It's like to me, that is his inner monologue translated to the screen, and it was fucking amazing. I was on the edge of my seat during those first 20 minutes up to when he fights that train gang or the gang. I was so afraid for them because that man was there to hurt people. And I think that's an important thing about the character study of Batman in this movie because, number one, the movie is almost 90% Batman, which is also a new thing that we haven't been given in any of these movies either. Bruce Wayne, I know the Bruce Wayne character is a little more aligned, is a little more dark and gloomy, just like his detective counterpart. But I think just like the Ben Affleck thing, I think in this movie it makes sense with the story that they're telling. Batman is very unhinged. It seems like I don't want to say he's relishing in the violence and the fear that he's putting out there, but he's not shying away from it either. And I think that's important. I think just like Michelle mentioned, it wasn't something I realized until after I left the movie because his emo face was really distracting me during the movie. I couldn't marry the 2 together. But then again, you think about it in hindsight, I think it totally makes sense with how he is now. It's year 2. He's not really getting results. I don't think he just hasn't figured out that he needs to separate the 2 characters yet.
Let's play a game. Just me and you. Any of this mean anything to you?
I'd like to know how you guys feel about Jim Gordon's portrayal in this one.
I thought he was awesome. I mean, he was exactly what Jim Gordon, to me, should be. Low-key, gritty. You get the sense that he's a tougher, worn down character. Gary Oldman looked good, but he wasn't as rough and gritty as Jim Gordon. How I prefer the character. This was just so, so great. I loved Gordon's relationship with Batman too. That scene together when they're in the jail. And they're whispering to each other was so awesome.
They even get to go out on a case. They're at the orphanage. They're side by side. That's, again, that's more of those little things that we just haven't seen yet. And it was an incredible thing to see on screen. Michelle, do you have anything to add for Gordon?
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I love Jeffrey Wright. I think that again, for me, what stood out less than about his portrayal, I think, but more about the relationship between him and Bruce, and also their relationship together. In relation to the rest of the police force, which I think is important. That really Gordon is Batman's only supporter when it comes to being a detective and being involved in the solving of these crimes. And I think that they did a great job at sort of the dichotomy between the two of them, the pair of them, and then the rest of the officers, which is important, because it shows that they see him as this vigilante, and they don't, think of him as someone who's valuable, and it helped to strengthen the relationship between the two of them throughout the film. I thought it was great.
It's very telling of the character of Gordon too, because it does seem like he seems to be willing to walk that line now with a vigilante. And that just shows you just how dire things are in Gotham, that he can't quite stick to the letter of the law entirely anymore. Like he has come to terms with that, and he thinks Batman is going to be a good thing. So it was a great representation of their relationship. And I'm glad we got it this time. They considered the Heath Ledger Joker to be like the modern day terrorist, whereas Paul Dano's Riddler is just flat out a serial killer.
You came. I've been trying to reach you.
I could talk about Paul Dano. I loved him. I loved him. Just like a highlight for me. I felt like he did everything right. And you're right. I have a soft spot in my heart for the whole serial killer aspect. I'm kind of into that, of course. As a lot of people are, and I think that it's sort of like a popular culture thing in and of itself, like the idea that he's based on the Zodiac, and but not only that, and people talk about that a lot, the actual puzzles in the Zodiac, and
sure.
But I think that there was also a really interesting element that I really latched onto in terms of not just the terrorist, not the serial killer, but the sort of loner who, the aspect of pulling in modern technology and the fact that he is live streaming to this following, that he has like 500 followers. And it felt to me almost like you're mixing in a little bit of like troubled teens, and like school shootings and people who are just disturbed in that way mentally. And there were so many elements of this just like intense psychological study of character. And I just thought he was fantastic. The look on his face when they capture him in the cafe and he has his head on the countertop. The scene between the two of them when he confronts him in Arkham. Oh my God, I was just like, it was brilliant. Every moment I was on the edge of my seat. He was perfect. Paul Dano was perfect, and I loved it.
Absolutely phenomenal, because I am a huge Zodiac fan of the movie, not the serial killer. I'm not a big fan of him.
People do love serial killers.
Yeah, no,
that's a thing.
It's
I know.
a cultural phenomenon. People are really into it, and they've been studying Zodiac for 40 years or whatever. It's crazy. Yeah.
Of course. The Riddler has never been considered a serious villain.
Sure.
He's the fact that they actually were able to make the Riddler a terrifying character, and in such a realistic way. So when people say that the Nolan was a translation of a real world Batman, but I think this captured such a happy medium between, gritty 80s like Batman comic book. It was just, absolutely phenomenal.
I love too the targeting the political figures, and I feel like he was taking sort of the targeting of these people to an extreme, and
sure.
I think that it was something that we as a modern society can semi-relate to, and I guess not so much a violent way, but the mayor-elect, she gives this speech at the end, and it's about essentially like dismantling systems and how we all have to trust each other, and it just, for me, that sort of like pulled it all together. That was like the message of tying in like how we all feel right now and what we're going through politically and what the film was trying to communicate. And so it still felt relatable in a way.
Yes.
And that is special. That's the mark of good writing, of good acting.
The Riddler, in this movie, to a certain degree, is a sympathetic character. His portrayal was unique, and he was a great foil for Batman. And he was deluded enough to think him and Batman were doing it together.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's another good layer to add on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
How do we feel about Catwoman? I feel like at least the relationship between her and Batman is, I think, the strongest it's ever been on screen. And Matt, do you have any thoughts here?
I do think it captured their relationship really well. I think I feel like we still haven't gotten a Catwoman on screen who's catty enough. Her and Batman are very close, whereas in the comic book, I feel like she's usually out for herself.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, and in this, it became more of a partnership.
That's funny. I didn't even really think about that, but I agree now that you bring that up. Yeah.
You wanted more puns? Do you want some more cat puns?
More cat-like movement.
No, but it's more of the, she lures him in, making him think that they're going to be,
sure,
that there's something there, and then it turns out she was just doing it as a ploy to benefit herself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring up Alfred in a second.
Yeah.
But I know the Penguin, is getting a spin-off show on HBO Max, which is fine. But I feel like Catwoman is the more interesting character, and
isn't she getting one too? I heard.
I don't know.
I didn't hear that. I heard about Penguin, but
that's the only one that's been like announced. But she had a very interesting past. I wish there was more to her story. But I think they do a good job of introducing an interesting origin for her. So I hope she gets a spinoff, because I think Zoe Kravtiz, really knocked it out of the park. And there's room for more. There's room for more to add to that character. Poor old Alfred, the oh so reliable Andy Serkis, not really in this movie all that much, and that's
a shame too.
That's one of my minor gripes with this movie.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a general consensus, I think.
Yeah, you just get little touches of like their relationship and little touches of his personality, kind of a thing, but definitely the least amount of Alfred that we've ever seen. So I was a little disappointed with that. Colin Farrell, that man was unrecognizable in that fat suit, and boy, he looked like he had a lot of fun hamming it up with that accent and that character. How do we feel about the Penguin? Michelle, can I start with you?
It's interesting because just in general, I tend to not be a huge fan of completely transforming an actor physically for a role, because I feel like it takes away from opportunities that other actors could have had who maybe looked more appropriate for the role. They do it, for the name, and so in general, I'm not a huge fan when films do that. But, but, I can say that I was super impressed. Yeah. I loved him. I loved how he wasn't so much the sort of like caricature that we're used to seeing. Because I mean, obviously Danny DeVito was iconic and had a good portrayal, but
he was gross.
That's what he was. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, but it was so neat to see Penguin sort of. Again, it's almost a little bit more of an origin story before he becomes Penguin. Sort of. Before he kind of develops his confidence and his just sort of his like villain nature, you know? He had a little bit of humor thrown in there.
Yeah.
His acting was fantastic. Again, unrecognizable. Never once thought Colin Farrell. It was just...
No.
It was great.
And it is weird because you do get a name for that, but then you can't even recognize him. I'm not saying it did. It obviously it worked, but it was an interesting approach.
It did. It worked, and sometimes it doesn't when they go all out like that. But I thought it was great.
Yeah.
He was one of the best parts of the whole movie. He stole the show for me. You know, for me, he's usually just he's an okay actor, you know, but in this, I think because he got to escape anything that would have held him back, because that's the one thing that does benefit you when you're in a mask or you're completely made up, is you get so liberated because you can be somebody completely different, and he really, really did that. I don't even know how are they going to make a spin-off show of him.
I don't either.
I can't wait. It's going to be great.
I appreciate not knowing what to expect, and he did such a great job. I mean, look, I'll give it a chance. Colin Farrell did a fantastic job, and I'm curious to see what the story could be. It's a little more centered. If it's centered on one character, who knows? It could be interesting. Is there anything that the movie didn't give you or seemed a little off?
I think they could have shaved about 30 minutes off the movie, and we still would have been great.
Yeah.
I just think that they probably could have consolidated to a little bit like 30 minutes less.
Yeah, I agree. There was a lot of detail packed into the film, like a lot of detail about the mob, the mobsters and the backstory. I had read that Reeves was really trying to do a Godfather type thing, and they focused on that a lot, and they focused a lot too on the detail of the riddles and the puzzles.
Yeah,
it seemed like there was a lot packed in there. There were moments though where it just worked. The whole. I mean, I feel like Alfred's really his sole purpose in this film was to sort of show the relationship that he had with Thomas, and
sure.
The reveal when he's in the hospital was, I mean, that was one of the better moments. And so the moments that they did have, the pivotal moments, worked, but there was a lot of other little, like Matt said, I think they could have shaved some stuff off.
I'm going to touch on that scene, that revelation with Thomas Wayne, because that's definitely one of my biggest gripes with this movie. It's because they introduce the possible corruption of the Waynes.
Yeah.
It's introduced and then immediately resolved in the next scene. If you're going to introduce it, make it a pivotal point of the movie, unless, why, otherwise don't put it in. He finds out there's possibly his father was corrupt. Cool. He goes to Falcone. He believes the mobster. And then he goes to Alfred in the hospital, who just woke up from a coma after opening a bomb, and says,
All these years, you lied to me, Alfred.
Like a petulant little child. And then Alfred's just like, no, he's a liar.
It was an emotional roller coaster, thinking that there was corruption and then finding out that that's not true.
And it lasted for 5 minutes. So, and again, it's not. I don't have a problem with it being in the movie, but I do have a problem with having it resolved so quickly. Like, if you're gonna do it, introduce it in the beginning of the movie. Let it simmer. Let it build. Like a story. And then my last little gripe. The unnecessary Joker cameo.
Yes, very unnecessary.
That's something worth griping about.
We don't need any more. But if you're gonna, okay, fine, we get it. He exists, but I think the movie had done such a good job of building up the Penguin and building up the Riddler and setting up this Gotham. It didn't need it.
And I don't think it was well executed either.
No, but the funny thing is that there's this talk about a scene that was cut of Batman going to see him.
I heard that. Yeah.
A la the Killing Joke. I'm curious to see that scene. I want to see it. Maybe I'd feel different if that scene was in the movie. I don't know if for better or worse, but I think it was.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy that. No, it felt forced, and to me, that version of the Joker doesn't seem like one that I will put on a pedestal of greatness just based off the few moments you get.
Sure.
I feel like the Riddler, his portrayal of the Riddler is going to be really up there for all time. Yeah. Penguin also. I don't think, for me, Joaquin Phoenix's Joker is super untouchable in my eyes. I feel like what he brought to it was so strong of a reality. It made you sympathize with the character. But it was believable. The version of the Joker we get at the end of this movie, it seems so much more animated than the entire rest of the movie.
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm gonna feel about Barry Keoghan.
Yeah,
like,
I don't either.
I don't know.
It's
done. It's been done.
There's a lot of big shoes to fill, and that's the problem.
Oh yeah.
And look, it's a Batman movie. The Batman movie's it's got a Batman, so you gotta have a Joker. But also, it's just we don't need it right now.
The reveal of the Batmobile.
Oh yeah.
Oh
that
yeah.
was a great moment.
It was
nice.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice to see.
Yeah.
It was a muscle car. It was just this beast of a car.
Absolute beast.
Not super stylized.
I also loved watching Bruce fiddle with some of his new technology, like the scene where he's jumping off of the
God.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, where he's jumping off of the police headquarters and he doesn't quite know how to use it. He doesn't know what he's doing. That was refreshing because it fit in year 2, and you never see him that vulnerable.
Yeah, I appreciate.
It was great.
I appreciate the somewhat limited amount of the tech because there wasn't that much.
Yeah.
Most of it was practical enough. I do like the addition of the grappling gun being in his gauntlet, actually a part of his suit.
Super cool.
It's a good practical way to have that kind of a device. And the flying squirrel suit, hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he hadn't figured it out yet. Took a little tumble.
The grappling gun is awesome.
The most advanced,
cool.
most advanced tech is the contact lenses. That's otherwise pretty much everything else you can kind of envision somebody having.
Yeah.
And then obviously that bulletproof suit. He got shot a lot. No one ever thinks to just shoot him in the mouth.
No. But you know what? The thing with the contact lens, what was cool is that yes, it's advanced, but the image that it captured was not.
It's super low tech. Yeah, it's not.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Because I think what they still did in such a great way, and I'm sure it was intentional, is that Gotham is usually timeless. There's you can't place a year on Gotham, and they did that in such a unique way where it was such a mashup of generations in one. It's a great thriller of a movie. It's really, if everyone compared it to the movie 7, I liked it better than 7.
Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, it was 7 with Batman in it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I loved the moment. I feel like it's very pivotal when they're all in the water and Batman is trying to save the civilians, and he reaches out and no one is, everyone's hesitant at first, and then that little boy is the first one to kind of come out and reach for Batman and trust Batman. That's the first time we see someone trusting him. Yeah. And then all the people follow, and of course then Woody's trying to set him on the stretcher, the victim wouldn't let go, and it felt. It just felt like a great development of the character. Yeah. It felt like a great origin.
That's the complete polar opposite of that civilian in the train station at the beginning of the movie.
Yes.
After he beats up all those thugs, he thinks he's still going to hurt him. So that's it. Batman, he gets a full arc in this movie, which is nice.
Yeah. And that moment happens right after he hears Riddler's follower,
Yeah.
you know, call himself vengeance, and I think that's important.
That's him
Because
realizing it.
in that moment, that's when he realizes, oh, maybe that's what I'm doing wrong. Maybe that's what I can change.
Yeah.
And that's the shift. Yeah.
I think the general consensus is that we all liked the movie very much. It was different enough and unique enough, and I think, man, it's crazy. Like, this is now like the 8th Batman, you know, movie that we've, you know, not including, you know, the ones in like the 40s, but
I love those.
I know
ones,
you
by the
do.
way. Those are,
But sorry, I'm not including those. I mean, maybe for some people it's gotten stale, but not for me.
no way. It'll never get stale. I don't.
It's I'm interested in seeing where this goes. Hopefully, it gets a sequel, and I think
Of course it will.
the rumor
right?
has it that it's going to go to HBO Max actually next month. I'm curious to see how this will translate once I'm watching it on my couch, seeing it.
I think this is the kind of movie I truly think that even at home, as long as you don't have the light on in the room, you know,
Yeah.
I think that it'll be easy to get sucked in because it's so textural and the depth is,
the movie's just excellent. All right, well, guys, thank
Yeah.
you so much for joining me on this little talk.
It was fun, man.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, anytime. Hopefully, I can have you guys back for another topic, and we'll talk some more.
We should talk more Batman.
Always down to talk about more
Always.
Batman. I love talking about this stuff. I love talking with people about this stuff, especially from people who appreciate
Absolutely.
it. So, I think that'll do it for Gabbin with Gabbin. Goodbye, everyone.
All right, man. Be good, man.